we would typically go and look at the Hot 100. I don't want to hear Cardi B for the next 3-4 months. I don't want to hear Ed Sheeran for the next 3 months, much less the next 3 hours. So a lot
Not
of
even
times,
Ed Sheeran?
not even Ed Sheeran. I mean, yeah. So
Ugh,
not even Ed Sheeran,
sacrilege.
yeah, exactly. But once again, talk about when a kid would mention, oh, hey, well, what about that Ed Sheeran tune? A lot of times it gave us an opportunity to step away from the rehearsal rather, and talk about, oh, hey, did you guys read that story about Ed Sheeran's being sued by the state of Marvin Gaye?
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers. I am your host, Elisa Jansen-Jones, and I am super excited for these next 2 episodes. You see, I'm already starting to plan next year, laying out my curriculum and picking songs for my ensembles. I'm planning to invest in a few more ukuleles so we have an actual classroom set without having to share. And we're going to have so much more fun than ever before. What kind of fun, you ask? Well, honestly, I'm not going to leave that entirely up to me. I'm going to put that on my students. More than ever before, I'm letting them pick the types of music that we do movement to, that we play in band, and even more. And I don't want you to take my word for it, my word that it's going to be more fun for them. So I've brought on my friend Steve Holley to talk about ways we can incorporate more of the music kids know and love today because they hear it being played more today. And what can happen when we do this? How will it change our classroom and even our students' behavior and engagement? Why is it important to shift our traditional music ed paradigm to be more inclusive of pop music? How can we implement pop music even during festival season? Can we really fulfill our curricular responsibilities by using songs that most of us wouldn't consider to be highly educational? Well, we're going to answer all of those questions and more in this episode. You're going to walk away on fire with ideas. But first, a huge shout out to Smart Music. Not only did Smart Music's new online platform win the School Band and Orchestra magazine's Best Tools for Schools award at the NAMM show this year, they are supporting one of the most innovative movements in music education professional development, the International Music Education Summit. Smart Music and the Summit have partnered to create virtual ensembles. Players sign into Smart Music, learn their part, submit their recorded rendition, and then their part is overlapped with all the others to create something truly unique. To learn more, visit musicedsummit.org and click on Virtual Ensembles. While you're online, be sure to check out the Smart Music blog too, where music educators share timely and practical tips you can implement in your classroom today. Now, turn on some Justin Bieber in the background and let's do this thing with Steve Holley.
I'm trying to think of what to say now that I don't have a job anymore.
Well,
Exactly.
my name is Steve and I am unemployed.
Hi, I'm Steve Holley. I was formerly the producer. Yeah, exactly. I don't know anymore. Typically, I introduce myself as either on self-imposed sabbatical or just completely unemployed, or as the husband of Kelly. So
you're between projects right now.
Yeah, exactly.
But tell everybody, give them a good reason why I chose you to be the one to talk about this subject with me.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Steve Holley. I was formerly the producer of the commercial music program at the Kent-Denver School outside of Denver, Colorado. We did things a little bit differently there insofar as we incorporated popular music there. Our program wasn't a traditional program insofar as we didn't have a concert band. We didn't have a marching band. We didn't have a pep band. We did have smaller ensembles comprised of rhythm and blues ensembles, soul ensembles, jazz ensembles, salsa, chamber ensembles, most styles of music that you typically don't see in a high school setting, but you might definitely see in a college setting. And the idea was to just use a multitude of styles of music to introduce the students not only to those styles of music, but also the cultures of music, the cultures that are behind those styles. During that time, the students, we toured all over the U.S., we toured internationally, and the kids during my time there, we were recognized by Downbeat Student Music Awards 15 times.
Awesome. So why did your school go away from the traditional ensembles of concert band and orchestra and a cappella choir?
Good question. I found out after I got there that they had never really had a traditional program. A lot of so the school where I taught is an independent school, a private school, tuition-based school, and most of those schools that I found typically don't have a traditional program. They have some sort of a non-traditional, at least a non-traditional component. They may have a concert band, but typically don't have marching bands. They may have a pet band, but they may also have some sort of a jazz ensemble or chamber ensemble or composition class or something like that. So I believe they had somewhat traditional ensembles back in the 70s. And then when my office mate, Ted Reese, when he came to the school in the late 80s, he started a couple of different jazz bands and also some guitar ensembles as well. And then when I came in 1999, the school basically said, we want you to use your strengths to build a program unlike any other. And they said, what are your strengths? And I actually ended up getting my undergraduate and my graduate degree in jazz and classical bass. And I finished those degrees at the University of Memphis. And so at the time, I was going from a recording session in the morning to a Brahms Beethoven symphony gig that night to a late night, jazz trio or R&B session. The next day, I'd wake up and I'd do the entire thing all over again. So I came in and said, well, there's not really one style of music that I specialize in. I've kind of always espoused that to be a professional musician, you kind of have, to be I'm not going to say professional musician. For me, how about this? For me, being competent in a multitude of styles meant that I was working every night of the week. So that's what I kind of brought to Kent Denver, and they said, "Yeah, do that." So that's effectively why we started out with just 2 jazz ensembles, and then very quickly the following year added a jazz combo, then a rhythm and blues ensemble, then we added some history courses, some theory courses, some composition courses, production courses, things like that. Then on down the line, we added another soul band, a salsa band, and so that's kind of that was the birth of the program. From there was basically the school giving me carte blanche to do whatever I wanted to do, which was really quite a blessing and quite a fun time in my life for sure.
Okay, so you have some great background yourself as a professional bass player. And I love what you say about how to be a really great functioning musician, you should be able to play a wide variety of styles. And I think we all agree with that. When I was teaching middle school band a long time ago, not this year, but in my first teaching gig a decade ago, I balked at my friends who were trying to start jazz bands with their middle school kids. I was like, why would you be starting jazz band when they can't play concert band literature? Like the rhythms are too challenging. The instrumentation is so different. It was like, why would you do pop music and stuff like that? And that was mainly the voice of my very traditional concert band director father, right? So anyway, yeah, my dad was always like, why would you start them on, this non-traditional music when they can't even like perform concert band literature to a high level? Like maybe you should start it in high school. So what would you say to that kind of argument? Can you learn jazz rhythms before quarter note, half note, quarter rest kind of rhythms? What do you think? Where's the advantage in that?
No, I think you absolutely can. Because if you think about it, if in terms of concert band rhythms, yes, they're more traditional rhythms, but that's not the style of music that kids are listening to. So they're going to be less influenced. They're going to be less familiar with concert band and probably symphonic music, orchestral music, than they are popular music. Here in Denver, we may have kids who are very familiar with cumbia and mariachi music, but may not know host the planets from a hole in the ground, just because that's not what they're familiar with. So that was part of it as well, is using styles of music that the kids were already consuming. They already had a buy-in. It's music they were already listening to. And if you look at it, music is music. The quarter note, the rhythms and the harmony, for the most part, whether you're looking at a traditional concert band piece or a jazz piece or a piece of popular music, it's pretty much the same. It's still all tertian harmony, as long as you don't get into Herbie Hancock, and we won't go there. But for the most part, it's all 1-3-5-7. Yes, in the jazz you have extensions and things like that, and drop two voicings and such. But to me, it's really the same. So that was certainly one of the things that we had to figure out early on, because the vast majority of jazz bands at the high school level are outgrowths of a traditional program. They're outgrowths of the concert band. To be in the jazz band, you have to be in the concert band. And that's kind of where you get your base of knowledge that you then take over to the jazz band. In our program, our R&B, as I mentioned, our R&B band was one of the bands. So we would, in addition to talking about standard harmonic structures and rhythms, we would also, and obviously culture and such, we would also talk about, well, here are the arpeggios. We'll look at this lick by the Memphis Horns. Let's analyze this and take a look at it. Okay, the trumpet player's in the fifth, the tenor saxophone player's in the flat seven, and the bari player is on the one. So where's the three? Oh, well, in the next chord, they then go to that. So we could actually spent a lot of time talking about traditional 4-part chorale writing, and how did not only these different horn sections and different bands, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tower, Power, all these bands, how did they create these horn parts? How did they create the different roles of each of the instruments? But also, what was the background of that? And in the end, it all comes to standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. So it wasn't that Otis Redding and the Memphis Horns and Aretha Franklin came out of nowhere. This is the background of that music. So we would go and we would take a look at Bach chorales, and as I mentioned, we would talk about 4-part voice leading. So that's kind of where that came from, and how we went about utilizing styles of popular music in a non-traditional setting to teach the kids, which it once again, it's really just music. It's not traditional or non-traditional or popular or concert band or symphonic. In the end, all the structures and music is just music.
Right. So you're still teaching them solid musical concepts. You're just utilizing a wider variety of material to do so.
Yeah, and I don't know that I even say a wider variety, because if you look at concert band literature and orchestral literature, Brahms is different from Mozart, is different from Agacum is different from Samuel Barber. So I don't know that it's necessarily wider, but it's definitely, if you play Celia Cruz for a kid, and then you play Aretha Franklin for a kid, I think they can definitely hear the differences. They can also find some similarities. Once again, I think it's the same thing if you play maybe a Bach chorale piece and a Charles Ives choral piece. You're going to hear some similarities, but you're also going to hear some differences. And that's one thing we really strive for as well, was not simply using traditional styles of musical notation. And this gets all into the argument around musical literacy. We did, all my kids could read. We worked on sight reading. We worked on theory, but we also did a lot of learning from the recording, in terms of listening to recording and saying, okay, how can we go about taking this from the CD, which we don't have anymore, CD or the stream or the MP3, and learn it without musical notation. So the kids who were stronger readers, we would have to build their oral skills, and the kids, typically my drummers and guitar players, who were stronger listeners, we would have to build on their reading skills. So once again, it's that differentiated instruction, and how do you hit every kid how do you help improve every kid where they need to improve?
Okay. So let's talk about a traditional school setting, and let's look at it in, band, orchestra, choir. Okay. Mm-hmm. So we've got multiple ensembles, but they're all pretty traditional. So for somebody in like the middle school level, how, I'm not going to break up my band and turn them into rock and R&B and jazz and pop ensembles, right? But let's talk about how can we incorporate pop music on that lowest level, and then we'll talk about the next level above that and the next level above that.
I guess my first question would be, well, why not split up your bands? Why not turn them into smaller chamber ensembles?
Oh, for a lot of us, we just don't have room in the schedule.
Yeah, truly.
Right. I mean,
Hmm.
so in fact, at my daughter's high school, she's in the top jazz band at her
Hmm.
school, and they don't have a class period. It's after school because the teacher just doesn't have enough
Hmm.
space in the schedule.
Hmm.
I don't have enough space in my schedule to break up
Hmm.
my beginning band into two
Hmm.
sections, which I would absolutely love, love, love if I could do that, but I can't. And so
Truly.
I have 51 beginner kids all in the same room at the same time. Anyway, so if we can't,
Hmm.
we're hands are tied. We've got our large ensemble, but we want to
Hmm.
take advantage of a lot of the things that you already addressed, that it's music
Hmm.
the kids can recognize, it's music that they relate to. It allows you to explore different cultures and shift your paradigm of teaching. And, if we can make it meaningful to the students in a new
Hmm.
way, then they can actually internalize and personalize it.
Hmm.
Okay. So give me some tips. How do I incorporate it really easily?
Well, I think there are a couple things you can do. I don't think that necessarily putting a concert band version of Soul Man in front of a concert band and having them play it, that's not necessary. That's not authentic insofar as poppy music education. That's just a concert band playing a concert band arrangement of a Sam and Dave tune. So I wouldn't say that that's authentic poppy music education. Um, for and once again, if we're talking about simply how can you introduce them, there it's kind of two ways to look at it. If you want to introduce them to new styles of music, then yes, doing that is a very easy way. To maybe not a very easy way, but there are concert band arrangements of Stevie Wonder tunes, of Aretha Franklin tunes. Probably not Tower of Power, probably Earth, Wind and Fire. So I think you probably can find those, or you can arrange them yourselves if you have that ability. So I think if you simply just don't have the room in the schedule, or you don't have the room in the facility, that's certainly one way you can go about doing it. That said, is kind of a caveat to that. One way, in terms of, like you mentioned, that there's just no room in the schedule. Well, I know that in the past, especially with our jazz combos, we typically always met during the same period, but we would have multiple combos. So what we did is we would have one group in this room, one group maybe over in this practice room, one group maybe up on the stage, one group in the gym, or just effectively wherever there was space. The cool thing about that is it all of a sudden turns you as a director into more of a coach, and you're kind of going around to each individual ensemble and not only imparting on them rehearsal skills, which hopefully they've already picked up in the larger rehearsal, but you're kind of giving those kids, say you take your 51 person ensemble, you turn them into five smaller groups of 10, basically five chamber groups. I think that would be a more authentic experience, because now you're no longer directing each individual ensemble. You're kind of going from one to the next, and you're giving them tips. You're giving them coaching tips about how they can improve, and then you kind of leave them on their own for a while. But that said, I also know from a classroom management standpoint that may be possible. It may not be possible. So that's kind of one way to go about it if you just want to simply introduce new styles of music to your students. If you want to introduce new styles of pedagogy involving them more, it's like something that you mentioned earlier, just letting them pick out the music. Maybe they don't pick it all out. Maybe you allow the students the first year, the first semester, to maybe only pick out one tune. So what I did back when iTunes was a thing was I gave the students the illusion that they were choosing all the tunes. So I created a playlist of 30, 40, 50 tunes, whatever it was, that that I could kind of cull through, that I thought would develop the students' strengths, but would also work on the weaknesses as well. So what I would do is I would pull my computer, my phone up, and say, "Oh, let's just randomly choose a tune, guys. What do you think about this?" But really, I had already gone through the list, and I had already kind of once again had already gone through it to determine which tunes were best for that band. If my lead trumpet player, couldn't play above the staff, okay, we're probably not going to do any of these arrangements. If I didn't have a strong horn section, we're probably not going to do Earth, Wind, and Fire or Tower of Power. If I had a great female singer, okay, now we're going to get into some of this style. Or a great male singer, okay, now we can get into some King Curtis, or maybe some Donny Hathaway or something like that, or maybe Earth, Wind, and Fire. So each year I would create a playlist that once again would kind of feed on the students' strengths. And then over the years, I did that less and less and less. So the last probably 5 to 6 years, I would come in and we would spend the first 2 days where I would present some tunes to the kids, but really 80 to 90 to 95% of the tunes that we played each year were chosen by the students. So they would come in and that would be we would have an assignment where I would ask them to bring in 5 tunes that they think would once again build on their strengths and develop their weaknesses. And then we just kind of went from there. But once again, it goes back to giving more responsibility to the students, giving them more ownership of the ensemble, to where once again, it really is, it's their band. And that was just, one small thing we did in terms of giving the students a little more ownership. And then from there, we can go into a lot of times the same way. I used to pretty much run rehearsals, but not from a director's capacity. We would typically rehearse in a circle. I have not been on a podium in 20 years. I have not owned a baton since my probably sophomore conducting class. I just don't. So I don't conduct or direct in the traditional sense. I coach. I'm more of a coach, much like a football player. I'm on the sideline during the games. I'm not on the stage during concerts. So that kind of, in rehearsals, it tended to be more of I would come in and I would ask the kids, well, what do you guys think? What about this? Did the transition from the bridge of this song to the chorus out, did that make sense to you all? And they would go, yeah, it seems like it really didn't go anywhere, and the drummer didn't set it up right, and the guitar player hit the wrong note, and the vocal harmonies weren't spot on. So it was really much less of me directing them and telling them what to do, and more of them utilizing their experience as budding young musicians to run the rehearsal. So it kind of came down to, if I could work myself out of a job, I was doing it correctly.
Oh, well, good job.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're giving the students a lot of autonomy. I love that you give them choices, but within a framework. So
Truly.
That's what I'm trying to do too. My top band is combined 7th and 8th grade, and I only have 14 kids in that class, right? So I have a lot of limitations, but I also have a lot of great opportunities. So one of the things I've told them is, our final band concert of the year is going to be all movie themed music.
Cool.
Right? And so I said, I'm going to post on Google Classroom these 10 pieces. I want you guys to listen and vote, and you guys get to decide what our final concert is. And then giving them the parameters like, hey guys, we do have 6 alto saxophones and our percussion is not super strong, right? Like I have one really great set drummer and 3 other percussionists who can keep a beat. So yeah, I love that. So that for someone like me with a traditional concert band, that's a great next step. In fact, one of the first things I did to get buy-in to was I programmed that song Hand Clap. Yeah. Granted, it was a concert band arrangement, but the kids loved it. And I ended up utilizing it to teach some of those more challenging rhythms and parts. And we had to, change some things and simplify some parts and stuff. But that was the best song on the program because the kids wanted to play it.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes across in the music. If the kids, I can think of probably thousands of times when I was on a stage somewhere playing a song that I didn't really, it was, the 1,000th time I'd played Mustang Sally, and I'm just watching the ball game on TV. Or, watching the couple at table 4 get in an argument because I just kind of went on automatic pilot. I didn't have the buy-in. But that's one of the other great things about letting the students choose the tunes is it gives them complete buy-in. And it's also great because it shows them that sometimes what they choose might not have been the best selection. I can remember one time we chose a Prince song, which is super easy. It was, I think it was Kiss, which is just a blues. It's 1-4-5, super easy. The kids are like, oh, this will be great. It's super easy. And they couldn't get it to sound decent to save their lives. And it was a great experience that's, hey, this isn't Earth, Wind, and Fire. This isn't, Tower Power. This isn't some crazy horn arrangement. It's a fairly simple blues. And for whatever reason, it doesn't sound that great. Let's figure out why. And then let's use that experience to move on and choose a different tune. So once again, it kind of it kind of went back on them, and they had, it kind of sounds bad, but they had no one to blame but themselves because they choose the tune. So,
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Have they ever picked songs that you hate?
oh Lord, all the time, all the time. Because that was another thing when I was choosing tunes. It was, or when I kind of culled the list, it was also, it was what would develop their strengths, what would develop the weaknesses, but what tunes can I tolerate for the next 3 months? So that was a lot of it as well. So we would typically go and look at the Hot 100. I don't want to hear Cardi B for the next 3 4 months. I don't want to hear Ed Sheeran for the next 3 months, much less the next 3 hours. So a lot
Not
of times,
even Ed Sheeran?
not even Ed Sheeran. I mean, yeah. So
Ugh,
not even Ed Sheeran, who's,
sacrilege.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But once again, talk about when a kid would mention, oh, hey, well, what about that Ed Sheeran tune? A lot of times it gave us an opportunity to step away from the rehearsal rather, and talk about, oh, hey, did you guys read that story about Ed Sheeran's being sued by the state of Marvin Gaye? And someone would go, oh yeah, I saw that on Twitter. And that would start a musical discussion completely outside the rehearsal. And we would have a chance to talk about, well, yeah, Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On is only 4 chords. This tune by Ed Sheeran is only 4 chords. Does it sound familiar to you guys? And then I would play them, back to back to back. And we would have an entirely separate conversation, an entirely different conversation, completely outside of the rehearsal. Their instruments may have still been in the cases. So we also did a lot of that, to where it wasn't just rehearse, 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 perform, perform, perform of, oh, hey, did you guys hear about this that's going on in music today? Did you guys hear that Spotify is being sued yet again? And it just gave us a chance to get to know each other better as a musical family and discuss music outside the context of the 4 walls of our rehearsal area.
So I did start this middle school choir.
Yeah.
Again, choir in quotations, right?
Gotcha.
Because these kids just have not had a strong culture of concert or a cappella choir. And so I got ukuleles, right? Because if I could teach them to play a little pop tune and sing along, that would at least get them singing. So my entire goal for the whole first half of the year was just to get them comfortable singing in front of each other. And so, the goal was not to teach them chords or ukulele or theory or anything like that. But I utilized that to facilitate them being open enough to sing with their voices. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the pop music is like the gateway drug, right?
Yeah. And the great thing about that is, God forbid that confidence they develop singing in front of their peers, that confidence go over into other areas of their lives. And that was a big part of it for me, is utilizing music to teach these life skills, to impart these life skills on these kids. Not just for the sake of music. So I think, I think what you just said right there is brilliant, insofar as giving the kids the confidence to sing in front of their friends. I mean, is there anything more frightening for a middle school boy than singing in front of their friends?
Yeah. In fact, so we got them singing in class, and then I ended up getting a couple of these 8th grade boys. Again, their voices are changing. They have not been trained. These are the only kids in the school who haven't had me as a teacher, because I've been there, 4 years. And I did eventually get them to sing the psalm in mass, which is like a big solo in front of the whole school. Did it sound great? No, but they did it. And they would not have done it if I hadn't done pop tunes as the first thing in class to get that buy-in. And one of the things I love about pop tunes too, and tell me how you've utilized this same thing, is they're very repetitive, and it's really easy to teach form in music. And so you look at the form, and then you go, okay, so if you can do this chord and this chord and this chord, then guess what? It does it again. Do, do, do. Yeah. And then it does it again. Do, do, do. And then we do something different. Do, do, do. It's also a lot easier to simplify it. So I had them starting with 2 chords on a song. And then when they got that, we added the 3rd chord. And then when they got that, we added the 4th chord. And it allowed me to differentiate the instruction too. For the kids who could only just do 2 chords, they only did 2. And the kids who were more advanced and could do 4. So have you found that using pop music, both repetitive and easy to differentiate instruction?
True, it's different. It's easier to differentiate instruction in some settings. There have been times we've had to change voicings, or I've had to rearrange tunes. Once again, if we didn't have a strong horn section, I would have to rearrange certain sections to effectively fit to fit our band. But going back to what you said, absolutely, we actually did that quite a bit, just in terms of talking about form. And one of the things we did was kind of moving over into more of an arranging composition area. Is instead of playing, I remember one of the things we did early on with our bands was take a song like "I Feel Good," James Brown. Once again, blues tune, very easy. The A section is just basically a 1-4-5. The bridge is, "When I hold you in my arms." So it's those kind of two sections. So what we tried to do as we developed as an ensemble, and some years it worked and some years it did. It depended on the maturity of our players and the leadership in the band. But the idea of, okay, let's take a look at this song. Yes, the original studio recording is intro, first chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, double chorus out. All right, well, what if after that double chorus out, you want to throw in a guitar solo or a saxophone solo, or the audience is really enjoying it and you want to go back to the second verse? How do you go about doing it? So we would take a tune. We also did, I think, Stevie Wonder's "Superstition" and some others. We typically started with easier tunes, and what that did was it forced everyone to listen to what was going on with the vocal. So the vocal comes in and says, and all of a sudden I can't think vocal. So when the vocal, yeah, it's "I Feel Good." So when the vocal comes in
I
and goes,
feel
"I
good.
feel
No,
good,"
no, no, no,
boom,
no, no,
we're
no.
going to the A section.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where everyone has to go immediately. If the vocal doesn't sing, we're going to bump, bump, but we're going to the bridge. And there were no hand signals. There was no looking. We're going to the bridge, pointing to their noses. None of that. It was purely on what are you hearing. And sometimes they were absolute ungodly train wrecks. And sometimes it was fun because it really forced them to listen. And then we'd say, okay, how do we take that exercise into a slightly more difficult tune? And then so it got to the point to where sometimes these kids would completely, to me, they would train wreck songs. I remember one time we were playing at BB King's in Memphis, and I think we were playing a Stevie Wonder song, and the vocalist went into the chorus. The band went into the verse because they weren't paying attention. They were nervous. They were at BB's. They just kept going. And it's kind of like that quote from Miles Davis. If you play something one time, it's a mistake. You play it two, it's kind of okay, what's that? You play it three times, it's a motif. It's an idea. It's legit at that point. So the kids, they played it with just such gumption that it's like, oh, she's singing the chorus, they're playing the verse, but okay, I guess it kind of works. Okay. And they kept going. They didn't train wreck. So that was the other thing, is with me not being on stage, if the kids, if the horns missed a repeat, if the vocalist went to the bridge instead of the chorus, it wasn't me bailing them out. It was them bailing each other out, supporting each other, and covering it up to the best of their musical ability to where the audience never noticed. So, and that brings on a whole nother level of musicality and responsibility. And once again, ownership in the ensemble.
So, do you feel like if I have a really small class, maybe I'm in a rural school, or it's a program that, I've just taken over, I'm starting to grow, or, for whatever reason, and I have really weird instrumentation and very few students, do you think that pop music ensembles is a good solution?
I think that it really depends on the given situation. It could be a good solution. I think if you have there's a colleague of mine in Austin. He has, I think, about an 18-member band. Traditionally, have a marching season. And he said, I didn't want to put 18 kids out on the field. It would just look small. And I didn't, the idea behind a marching band is it's big and it's loud and it's a spectacle. Especially probably more so nowadays than when I was in school. So what he did, he kind of just did. He said, like, you know what? I'm just going to put a rock band on the field. So he had the pit down front with guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, and he had the horns out on the field. And I don't think they were really doing any moving whatsoever. They just kind of marched out there, turned around, played their really cool halftime show, marched, quote unquote, off the field, and that was it. And he's getting rave responses, rave reviews, that it's different. In my situation, I kind of ran into that when I first came to Kent Denver, was we wanted to start a chamber ensemble. But a good number of my kids at the time, I think I had the principal cellist of the Denver Young Artists Orchestra, had the principal violinist, the principal violist, had all these kids who were already playing at a very high level. So I didn't want to do the same warhorse pieces that they were already doing on the weekends. I didn't want to do the Mozart or the Beethoven quartets or the Haydn quartets or the Mozart trios. I just didn't want to do those. We thought, well, okay, we have a very odd instrumentation. Have a clarinet player. I have a conga. I have a conguero, a conga player, and I have this. Okay, what do we? I have a violinist who also plays the Chinese harp, Gu Song. So I brought in one of them and said, "Hey guys, how many of you guys have heard of Yo-Yo Ma?" And they all raised their hand. Okay, how many of you guys have heard of the Silk Road Project? And 3 or 4 of the kids, their mouths just dropped. I said, "Hey, let's play this." And so I played some songs from the Silk Road Project. I said, "What do you guys think about, instead of doing the traditional pieces, what do you guys think about doing some of these style tunes?" So we ended up once again using non-traditional songs in a very much more traditional setting, and it expanded on from there to do some other pieces. We did some of the Yo-Yo Ma, Edgar Meyer, Mark O'Connor pieces. So we kind of did some bluegrass, newgrass pieces. And it was great for the years we had it, because the kids were engaged playing their traditional instruments in a non-traditional setting. And once again, it gave them the ownership to help choose songs. And we also, sometimes I would rather arrange the songs, or sometimes we would just kind of pick them out on the fly if they were fairly simple songs. So that was a couple of instances of how you might be able to, in a marching band setting and also in a chamber ensemble setting, how utilizing popular music or non-traditional musics might be a good fit.
Well, I think the real big takeaway here is that popular music can be a great tool in your tool belt, and using it creatively and engaging your students in the process and really making it, what am I trying to say? Not a cornerstone necessarily, but a pillar in your program. It's the way of the future, and it's a great way for a myriad of reasons. So if investigate and learn more and use it in moderation.
Yeah, or not.
Or just go for it. Jump in.
In my program, that was our bag. And I think, yeah, truly. And I think, one of the things that I really espouse is, a lot of times I hear, "Oh, you want to do away with marching band, you want to do away, or pop music education as a whole wants to do away with traditional music education." And nothing could be farther from the truth. And as I've shared with you before, I'm a product of a very traditional setting. My mom was a 35-year band director, so I grew up spraying hash lines on a football field with diesel when I was 6 years old. So that's my background. I didn't come from a non-traditional setting. From a non-traditional education. I come from a very traditional education, a very traditional background. I just kind of said, well, what if I do this as well? What if I do this inclusive of these other areas? So I think with pop music education, just as you said, it's a component. In some areas it might be 10%, in some areas it might be 90%, or just some variation thereof. But I think in terms of reaching all the kids who are out there, in terms of reaching the other 80% of kids who are not darkening our band, orchestra, choir rooms, how do we go about reaching those kids? And I think one of the best ways to do it is by utilizing music that they will probably be a little more familiar with and a little more open to experimenting with. And that would be pop music.
Totally. So where do we go for more resources? What are some good resources we can tap into?
The good thing about pop music education is really growing right now. And this isn't something new. It really goes back to 1967. So there's tons of research. There's a good amount of, I won't say tons, there's a good amount of research out there, but there's the Association for Popular Music Education is a great organization. National Association for Music Education, they have a great blog that's out there where I have several of my blogs that you can check out. You can also go to my website at steveholleymusic.com. I have links to not only several curated list of articles and such, but also several of my articles and conference presentations. I think the Smart Music blog, some information on there. So just type in Poppy Music Education, and frankly, you'll be surprised at the information that's available. But if anyone has any questions or concerns or thoughts or wants to debate me, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You can reach out to me through my website or just at steveholleymusic@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at @steveholley_. So yeah, there's quite a bit of information out there. It's just finding it and figuring out what works best in your situation and for your kids.
And you're going to be presenting at the International Music Education Summit this June, aren't you?
I am indeed. I'm presenting on 2 separate times, actually.
And do you want to share what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, one will actually be on differentiated music instruction in the rehearsal atmosphere, what that kind of looks like. And a lot of it does include getting off that podium, putting the baton down, putting yourself where the kids are. And the other one that I'll be doing is talking a lot about what we just talked about, is how to go about utilizing aspects of popular music and also popular music pedagogy in a traditional setting, in a more traditional setting.
Awesome. Super cool. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for your time. Any final words of advice for our listeners of this episode?
Oh, I could go on for a while. I would just say, just don't be scared. I know that in traditional music teacher programs, you typically don't learn this. You typically go through the wind ensembles and the brass techniques classes and the percussion techniques. Don't be afraid to jump in and get your feet wet and become a student again. I knew very little about salsa music until we decided to start a salsa band, and it was great because I became a student again, and now I'm playing professionally in salsa ensembles, and I love it. So don't be afraid to venture out of whatever box you've created or has been created for you, and just try new things. Continually be a student, and in the end, it's going to benefit you as an educator, you as a professional musician, and also in the end, and maybe most importantly, is going to benefit your students.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
I have to be really honest with you as we wrap up that interview. This episode and the next one have been so instrumental in my own paradigm shift in my classroom. These 2 gentlemen, Steve this week and Scott next time, have really helped me have a breakthrough. It's shaken me to my traditional band director core, all the way down to why do we teach music at all? I mean, I could get really deeply philosophical, and that could get really boring really fast, but stick with me here. Just ask yourself, why are we teaching the same hokey songs out of the same 4 books over and over and over again? How many of our students recognize Wabash Cannonball or Clair de Lune? I'm not saying let's toss them out altogether. My kindergartners beg to play the singing games that have been classroom staples for 50 years. But they also love doing big body movements to Maroon 5. My 3rd graders sing along to Happier by Marshmello. And my beginning band students can all play Baby Shark by ear. Next time, my guest is Dr. Scott Burstein, the Director of Teaching and Learning for Little Kids Rock, and the director of the All-National Modern Band Honor Ensemble at the National Association for Music Education Conference this year. And don't think that just because you're a high school choir teacher, you won't have something to learn from Scott. Trust me here, it's not just for little kids and it's not just rock. You're going to love it. Friends, it would absolutely make my year if you would help us spread the word about this podcast. Like, share, subscribe, and give us 5-star ratings. That's how other music educators will find us too. Remember to check out what's new in the Smart Music blog and discover the modern way to get professional development right from home, the International Music Education Summit. From live band demonstrations to streamed concerts a sing-along with Andy Beck, to panel discussions with the Global Teacher Prize finalists. The 2019 International Music Education Summit event is going to be something absolutely incredible. You won't want to miss it. Use the code PODCAST at checkout and snag 20% off the already affordable registration fee. Remember that with this episode, we also have a fun free download, ways that you can incorporate pop music into your classroom today. And with that, my friends, I bid you to keep teaching on.